Please pay off the debt. This abrupt email from my husband David came while I was at work. Panicking, I immediately contacted him, only to find him calm. I've fallen for another woman. I'm starting a new life with her. He even said he would take a luxury car that we just bought and has a loan in my name. Ignoring my haste to stop him, the phone hung up unilaterally and I never heard from him again. Thus, leaving a hefty debt behind, David disappeared with his mistress. I had never imagined something so cruel could happen with my 10-year-old son in my arms before, and I was at a loss as to what to do next. My mind went blank. I'm Zoe, 35 years old. I was part of a family of 3 with David and our 10-year-old son, Owen. Owen has been a curious child from a young age, often reading academic papers on the computer and asking me what I thought about them. I was always amazed by his intelligence, though I struggled to respond to his complex questions. David, on the other hand, had trouble keeping a job. Due to our uncertain future, I also worked full-time. However, he finally managed to keep the same job for 3 years, bringing some financial stability to our lives. Recently, David wanted to create memories for the 3 of us, so we decided to buy a $50,000 RV. However, due to David's poor credit, I had to take out the loan in my name. On the day the RV was finally delivered, something unbelievable happened. He said, "I'll take the brand new RV. It's in your name, so you have to pay back the loan." I was at work when my husband suddenly texted me. Confused, I called him immediately. "What do you mean? I've fallen for another woman." What are you talking about?" At first I thought I was just having an affair, but now I'm serious about this woman. I've decided to start my life over with her. So long. I'll file the divorce papers that we wrote when we had the fight before. The phone call ended. I was shocked to learn of David's betrayal, feeling as if I'd been hit by a hammer. No matter how many times I called him afterward, but his phone is disconnected. Is this really happening? After finishing work, I returned home and checked the drawer where the divorce papers were supposed to be, only to find it empty. Left with the RV's $50,000 loan, I was overwhelmed with debt. Refusing to accept this, I kept trying to contact David, but he never responded. My intelligent son, Owen, noticed something was wrong. After dinner, he looked at me worriedly. "Mom, you haven't been eating much lately. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm just a bit tired. Though." I looked right up. It's not good to lie. Dad hasn't been home for 3 days, maybe something happened to him. Startled by Owen's insightful words, I took a deep breath to compose myself. Realizing I couldn't keep this hidden forever, I told him everything. "So, Dad would do something like this, huh? Aren't you surprised? I kind of expected this might happen." Owen seemed calm, as if he had foreseen this, but deep down, I knew he must be saddened by our impending divorce. Apologizing to him in my heart, I threw myself into work, trying to erase the painful memories. However, my body couldn't keep up with the stress, and I gradually started to feel unwell. On that day, there was a training session at work, but I just couldn't stay on my feet and ended up crouching down. "I feel sick, I need to take a break." I could hear my concerned colleagues, but before I could respond, I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in a hospital, told that I needed thorough medical tests and had to be admitted. I'm so weak. I'm ashamed of myself. Tears streamed down my face as I looked up at my arm connected to the 4-tube and the white ceiling of the hospital room. At that moment, my usually calm son, Owen, rushed to my side, looking panicked, so I quickly wiped away my tears. "Mom, are you okay? You're not going to die, right? I wouldn't leave you behind." I was so scared when the school told me you were taken to the hospital. I thought my heart would stop. Owen, who usually speaks like an adult, is still just 10 years old. For his sake, I knew I had to get better, but the situation was more serious than I thought. After the tests, it turned out I had a severe illness. The doctors said surgery should be done as soon as possible. Please decide quickly. So I underwent the surgery as advised. A month had passed since my ex-husband, David, left, and I was finally discharged from the hospital. When I got home and checked the mailbox, I found a notice for overdue payments on the RV loan. The payments should have been deducted from my account. This is strange. When I went to check my bank book and stamp in the safe, they were gone. In a panic, I checked my bank balance using my debit card and found that my savings of $30,000 had dwindled to just $5.87. It must be David's doing. How do I get it back if I can't contact him? Even if I wanted to sell the RV, I can't do anything about it because I don't have it on hand. Everything seemed to be going downhill since David left, plunging me back into a deep despair. Seeing me like this, Owen put his hand on my forehead. Your face looks pale. Are you feeling sick again? You don't seem to have a fever. I'm physically fine. It's just that your dad took not only the car but all our savings too. I'm at a loss. I can't go back to work right away. Then I'll do a paper route or something. I'll also look for some jobs online. Seeing my 10-year-old son trying so hard to encourage me, I told myself I couldn't afford to be down. I'm sorry for making you worry all the time. I'll pull myself together and try harder. As I smiled at Owen, he smiled back and suddenly had an idea. First, let's get the car back from Dad. How? The RV is in your name, right? Yes, it is. Then, Owen shared with me a brilliant plan. I never would have thought of that, but we don't know where your dad is. I can find out with my phone. A month ago, when we went hiking as a family, Owen, who's usually so careful, strangely got lost. That's when we bought a kid's phone for him and installed a GPS tracking app on it, which both David and I had access to. I've been tracking his location in real time. Dad's been moving around a lot, I see. But even if we catch him, if he just makes up some excuse, it won't help. As I pondered, chin in hand, Owen grinned and said something surprising. Don't worry, I've already taken care of it. What? What did you say? It turned out that Owen had been quite busy while I was in the hospital, taking incredible actions all on his own. I can't believe I gave birth to this child. He's so smart. Realizing the meaning of his words, I was just shocked. He even had information on David's mistress. Let's work together to punish your dad for betraying us. Let's get started right away. So, my son Owen and I teamed up to prepare for what was to come. With Owen by my side, I'm unstoppable. Bring it on. 3 days later, my phone started ringing. Please help me. Who is this? Don't play dumb. Of course I'm your husband. The police are questioning me about you. If I don't do something, I might be arbitrarily escorted to the police station. Do something. Okay, wait a bit. I quickly grabbed Owen and went to the location where David was. Surprisingly, it was near our house, in a forest park where camping was possible. David was there, looking flustered as the police questioned him. I sighed and told the police, let us talk first, and they left. Then, David, obviously embarrassed of being seen by the people around him, asked me and Owen to get into the car. The woman he was with, his mistress, Maya, glared at us with crossed legs, but that didn't bother me anymore. You saved me. Why were the cops at my place? I filed a report that the RV was missing. What? Why would you do that? It's in my name, so it's technically stolen. David insisted that no crime is committed between spouses, but I wasn't buying it. You filed for divorce, remember? Driving someone else's car without permission is a crime. Owen figured that out and told me. You're still a clever little brat, but I just borrowed the car. Then you'll return it. Great. I reached out my hand, and David reluctantly handed over the RV keys. After seeing through that, Owen spoke up quietly. Dad, why did you abandon us for this woman? David was visibly shaken, having never expected such a question from his son. As he scratched his head in confusion, Maya laughed and spoke up. It's because I'm more attractive than your mother. He's so smitten with me that he was willing to leave his family. I didn't ask you, lady. Dad, answer me. Maya was silenced by Owen's stern tone, but David didn't respond. If you won't tell the truth, I'll get the police involved. No, please. I'll talk. David then revealed that he met Maya, a new employee, 3 months ago. They were attracted to each other and became deeply involved during a welcome party for newcomers, and soon found out she was pregnant. So, he decided to start new life with her and left us. Why did you take the RV? I quit my job and was going to sell it for cash. But you've been driving it around a lot, haven't you? I was hesitant to sell it right away and went on a little trip. Wait, how do you know all this? Did you forget? After Owen got lost on our hiking trip, we bought him a kid's phone with a GPS app, which we also installed on your phone. Thanks to that, we knew exactly where you were. By the way, I also heard this story from my son, that when all three of us went hiking, Owen pretended to be lost on purpose because he wanted to have a cell phone. I was astounded by Owen's foresight. Dad was acting strangely, so I hatched a plan to find out what he was up to. You're a frightening kid. I'll never become an adult who betrays loved ones like you. In contrast to David, who could not even argue with his son's moxie, it was reassuring to see my son, who was so dependable that it was hard to believe he was 10 years old. It was my turn now. Return the $30,000 you took from my account right now. That's our joint property. That was my savings from before we got married. We hardly have any joint property because you couldn't keep a job. I was dismayed to hear that my husband and his lover had already spent the $30,000 by having an extravagant time together. At that moment, I felt relieved that I had divorced this man. Well, if it's not just the car but also money you've stolen, this could turn into a serious crime. What? Didn't you just send the police away? I said we'd talk. I never said I'd withdraw the complaint. I'll add the theft of my money to the report. I can call them back with the press of a button. While we were talking, Maya tried to sneak out of the RV quietly. But just then, she let out a loud scream. Because her parents, red-faced and furious, were standing outside the door. They scolded her severely as she backed away. I get it now, don't get so mad at me. But why are Mom and Dad here? Because I called your parents. What do you mean? Apparently, while I was in the hospital, Owen had gone to David's company and tearfully told them, my dad left with a woman I don't know, and my mom collapsed. His colleagues, moved by his frail and sad appearance, suspected Maya, who had resigned with David, and gave Owen her parents' address. Photos from the company's welcome party showed David and Maya getting cozy, confirming their suspicion. I heard that you're living with your parents, so I took the pictures they gave me, and your parents came out. So I told them everything that happened. And then I contacted Maya's parents to wait nearby. This is the worst. That's my line. You're quite pregnant. When is the baby due? In 3 months. Wait, that doesn't add up. You met 3 months ago, right? It's way too early for you to be giving birth. David, unaware of this fact, was shocked and looked at Maya. What? What does this mean? Don't you get it? It takes about 9 months from pregnancy to birth. That means the baby isn't yours, genius. What? Maya, you deceived me. So close to pulling it off. It's your fault for not seeing through my lies. Don't mess with me. It's your fault my life is ruined. Their ugly argument began, but we left them to it and called the police again. As darkness fell, the red lights of the police car shone brightly. I was wrong. I won't cheat again, and will work hard. Please, spare me from the police. Someone as goofy as you, Dad, is not going to change that easily. He's right. I can't trust you. Reflect on your actions with the police. If I'm charged, I won't be able to repay the money. Is that okay with you? I'll have you make amends and then pay me back slowly. I've already found a place for you to work. You'll pay alimony for Owen, the $30,000 you stole from me, and the RV. Then, I had my final words for Maya. You seemed attached, but you're an accomplice to David's theft. When I told Maya that if David couldn't repay the money he stole from me, she would have to pay it instead, she started trembling. She turned to her parents for help, but they disowned her, saying, "We'll have nothing to do with a daughter who causes trouble for others." David and Maya were taken away in the police car. Thanks to my intelligent son, we were able to bring them to justice. I heard they wouldn't be held for long, but they faced a large payment to me. I had my lawyer demand $20,000 each from them in damages, plus the $30,000 David withdrew from my account. I also made David agree to pay $500 a month in child support. I arranged for him to work at a subcontractor of my company, where his wages would be garnished to pay his debts. Eventually, I sold the RV, freeing myself from the loan. My health improved rapidly, and I'm now back to working energetically. Owen helps with housework and runs errands willingly. I'll do my best to ensure he can pursue his own path unimpeded. This house, $3 million inheritance, and the position of the hospital's director will be inherited by my husband, the eldest son. When Rita heard that a lawyer was in my home for Tony's inheritance proceedings, she couldn't contain her excitement and brazenly marched into the living room. She had always been pressuring me, asking, "When will we get the inheritance?" and behaving insensitively. Rita had undoubtedly been waiting for this day for a long time. Seeing Rita approach the lawyer seated opposite me, the old me would have probably raised my voice and scolded her. But now, I was genuinely curious, even excited, about what audacious thing she might say to the lawyer. Her comment was so ridiculously greedy that I burst into laughter. The lawyer's shocked face made it even funnier, and I continued to laugh at her audacity. Of course, Rita didn't find it funny at all. "Do you really think you'll get your FIL's inheritance?" Rita's single-minded obsession with money made me snort with laughter. Douglas arrived later, and Rita, pointing at him, yelled, "My husband has inheritance rights." It was finally time for me to tell them the truth. My name is Kate. I'll be turning 65 this year. I've been a housewife and supported my husband, Tony, who worked tirelessly as a doctor for many years. Even after he became the director of the hospital, he continued to work actively as a doctor. We were blessed with a son who, inspired by Tony's dedication, also chose to be a doctor. I believe he'd led a fulfilling life. Sadly, Tony passed away at the age of 68. He was so dedicated that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was born to be a doctor. I sometimes wonder if his relentless work took a toll on his health, but at his funeral, it was clear that he had no regrets about the way he lived. There were many who mourned Tony's passing. The funeral was packed with his colleagues. Beyond that, many former patients also offered their condolences. My daily routine had often been simply watching Tony leave for work. Seeing how many people respected him made me realize that I had made the right choice to support him as a housewife. During the funeral, the only person visibly restless and inappropriate was my eldest son's wife, Rita. She had a smirk on her face, almost as if she was happy about Tony's passing. Confirming my suspicions, I overheard her making insensitive remarks among relatives. Tony was always so busy with work, wasn't he? I bet he didn't have time to spend his money, and must have saved a lot. I couldn't believe my ears. Despite being in the middle of the funeral, Rita seemed excited, wondering how Tony's inheritance would be distributed. She might not even know that a DIL like her doesn't have inheritance rights, but more than that, her attitude was entirely inappropriate. Seeing my distress, my eldest son, Douglas, whispered an apology to me. "Mom, I'm sorry. I've spoken to Rita, but she doesn't listen." "It's not your fault, but if you feel that way, can you please talk to her again?" I was already aware of Rita's behavior before Douglas mentioned it. I look back, how intolerable she always had been. Even when I was busy preparing for the funeral, she came to my home but didn't offer any help. Instead, she only brought up the topic of money. She asked me how much inheritance did Tony leave. "It must be a lot, right? Please don't splurge all of Tony's inheritance even though you're his wife. Are you here just to say these things? Because it'll be a problem if you spend it all even though you don't have much time left." I was both angered and disgusted by Rita's audacity, treating Tony's assets as if they were her own. Furthermore, she looked down on me, constantly making snide remarks. I don't know when our relationship became this strained, but her obsession with money and entitlement left me dumbfounded time and time again. Douglas, who had married Rita, was also a doctor, just like his father. Douglas was by no means struggling financially, but Rita had always been overly fixated on money. She'd frequently call me, hinting at needing financial help, saying we're really tight on money or I'm worried about Douglas' unpredictable income, and we've always been at odds because of this. Now, with Rita trying to get the inheritance, my patience was wearing thin. Douglas' income is so unstable, we can't even enjoy some luxuries. Well, why don't you start working and contribute to the household? You expect a wife to work. You're so lucky, living comfortably thanks to your husband's earnings. No matter what I said, Rita's attitude only worsened, as if she was looking for a fight. She seemed to take joy in belittling her own husband, Douglas, just to mock me. I couldn't stand her selfishness and constant disrespectful attitude towards me. Well, I've indeed lived comfortably, thanks to my husband. Maybe you should try showing a little respect to your husband as well. I would if there was something to respect. Anyway, I have to go to a nail salon now. Please don't forget about the inheritance, okay? Having said all she wanted, Rita quickly left. I was concerned about how Douglas was treated at home due to Rita's tempestuous behavior. Yet, Rita's brazen attitude did not stop there. Even during the inheritance proceedings, she repeatedly did awful things. After the funeral, Rita often came to my home, repeatedly asking, "Is the inheritance ready yet?" like a broken record. No matter how many times I told her that proceedings take time, she kept me asking again and again. I once told her she had no authority, but she brushed it off as if it was nothing. I wasn't sure if she planned to take Douglas' share for herself or if she had another scheme in mind, but Rita was hell-bent on believing she'd get a huge sum. Perhaps she had made some deal with Douglas to get a share of the inheritance. Had that been it, I wouldn't have intervened. However, Rita's brazen behavior didn't stop there. She even tried to take valuable items from my home. "Hey, that's my necklace. Why are you wearing it?" "It's fine because we're family, right? Let's get along." I refused to get along with a thief. "Well then, consider this an advance on the inheritance. I've been patient waiting for you." No matter how much I scolded her for her actions, Rita wouldn't listen. Unable to bear her taking the necklace Tony had given me without permission, I decided not to let Rita in my home anymore. Douglas kept apologizing, saying, "I'm sorry for what Rita did." But he never stopped her, and I had little hope he ever would. With no time to mourn the loss of the gift from Tony, the harassment from Rita continued. Since I refused her coming to my home, she seemed to be bad-mouthing me to her friends, calling me a heartless mill who doesn't let me in her house. My kind neighbors, seeing the situation, would just give me sympathetic smiles, but I was left wondering, why must I be so hated? The last straw was a strange envelope in my mailbox. When I saw the already opened envelope, I felt uneasy. It was addressed to Rita. As a revenge for not letting her in my home, Rita had placed her credit card bill in my mailbox. The bill listed lavish dinners and a staggering amount from online shopping. I was shocked. "Hey, I found a credit card bill addressed to Rita in my mailbox. What's going on?" "I have no idea. Rita seems to be living quite luxuriously, doesn't she? She always talked about money issues, but can she afford this?" "Well, about that. I'm short of money right now. Could you, maybe, cover that for me?" I called Douglas to make him pay Rita's bill. But he made an outrageous request, leaving me speechless. He might have been influenced by Rita. Why would he assume I'd help them out? How could he ask such a thing when he can't even return the necklace his wife stole from his mother? His everyday selfish behavior was already concerning, but it seemed Douglas only remembered things that were convenient for him. "You know my support for you guys is over. At your age, how can you still burden your parents?" "Well, they still Dad's inheritance, right? I think it's too much for you, so you can help us out." "You've got a nerve. You two are truly a match made in heaven. Just stay out of my life." His nonchalant attitude made my blood boil. I hung up and immediately trashed the bill. Did Rita really think I'd cover her bill? Just thinking about her audacity made my head spin. "Do you think they're actually trying to get the inheritance? What should I do, Tony?" I picked up a picture of Tony and asked out loud. My feelings toward Douglas and Rita were a jumble of anger, disappointment, and confusion. Would it be really okay to proceed with the inheritance? Amidst fleeting anxiety, I managed to muster up some courage. They'll get what's coming to them one day. Due to the insufferable behavior of them, I was pushing forward with the paperwork alone, harboring my resentment. My saving grace was the will that Tony left behind, which mentioned something crucial. Reading Tony's will, I decided to take revenge against them. "I knew it. You've always been on my side, Tony." Staring at the will, I regained my composure. I won't just roll over and let them have their way. I had decided to seize the opportunity and give a big payback to them. Feeling like I could finally retaliate, I totally forgot about the bill Rita had given me. I wasn't originally planning on doing anything about it, but whether she realized I had ignored it or not, I received a call from Rita. She kept making a false complaint that I say the inheritance process wasn't finished yet just because I want to keep everything for myself. You haven't given us the inheritance yet. I'll wait a bit longer, so please make sure to pay the bill I left in your mailbox. Don't be silly. Why do you think you're entitled to any money in the first place? Well, isn't it obvious? Douglas is the eldest son. Rita said, laughing, as if to mock my ignorance. Sure, being the eldest son, Douglas has inheritance rights. Generally speaking, that's true. But even after Rita had said all that, I still hadn't told them the most important thing. Even though they should know about it since it's their own business, they probably haven't even thought of it, being as self-centered as they are. I was eagerly awaiting the perfect moment to knock them down a peg. And that moment finally came. It was when I had explained the situation to the lawyer and asked him for help. After finalizing things with the lawyer, I contacted Douglas. As expected, Rita, overjoyed, came rushing over to my home. I purposely left the front door unlocked that day. Rita, without hesitation, opened the door and walked in. I had to hold back my laughter seeing her just walked in. Finally. I've been waiting forever. You've been holding back, not giving us the inheritance. Rita, why are you here exactly? Is this guy the lawyer? I'm Rita, Douglas's wife. Nice to meet you. Ignoring me, Rita hurriedly approached the lawyer who was sitting across from me. Normally, I'd be raising her voice in complaint, but I held back, waiting for Rita to speak. At this point, I was even excited to hear what Rita was going to say to the lawyer. This house, $3 million inheritance, and the position of the hospital's director will be inherited by my husband, the eldest son. Excuse me. Her comment was so ridiculously greedy that I burst into laughter. The lawyer's shocked face made it even funnier, and I continued to laugh at her audacity. Of course, Rita didn't find it funny at all. Why are you laughing? Are you jealous that we're getting the inheritance? $3 million. Where did you get that figure from? He's been a doctor his whole life, right? He must have had at least that much saved up. Don't tell me you've already spent it all. Rita, with her evident obsession with money, made me chuckle. It's my inheritance, I don't owe her any explanations. But it seemed Rita wasn't pleased with me having any money at all. I warned you, didn't I? To not spend all the money. It's pretty bold of you to say that to your mill. I've been warning you that you don't have any rights. Flaunting the necklace she stole from me, Rita glared at me as if blaming me for something. But I had no intentions of giving in anymore. I clenched my fists, ready to stand up against Rita, who was incredibly selfish and greedy. Douglas arrived later, and Rita, pointing at him, yelled, "My husband has inheritance rights." It was finally time for me to tell them the truth. You guys shouldn't expect any inheritance. Right, Douglas? Wait, what? Why? You don't remember. You can't be serious. You're still bringing that up. It's a done deal. What are you talking about? It's ridiculous to think it's a done deal without making any amends. What are you guys talking about? Rita seemed genuinely clueless, and I was astounded. She hadn't remembered what she had done. To remind her and Douglas, I began to explain everything to them. A few years back, Douglas married Rita. But just a little while ago, Douglas had been married to another woman. Moreover, despite having a child, Douglas paid no attention to his family and cheated with Rita, leading to their marriage. The shocking story came to light when Douglas, unable to pay alimony and child support to his ex-wife, asked Tony for help. I never thought you'd be this unreasonable. What were you thinking? I had no choice. It was the only way for me to marry Rita. You better make up for your betrayal on your own. I'm not giving you any money. Come on, you just need to help me a bit. You've been working as a doctor for ages, you must have saved a lot. Hearing those words, Tony's patience had long run out. Douglas started making excuses, saying that he is struggling with his new life and needing money for his seasoned wedding. Tony, deciding to prioritize his grandchild over his son, took a drastic step. Fine, I'll pay on your behalf. My grandchild shouldn't suffer because of a father like you. Why are you being so sarcastic? In return, don't ever expect any money from me again. And don't think you'll get a penny of my inheritance." At that time, Douglas seemed to underestimate Tony's words, thinking it was just a temporary declaration. But Tony didn't even attend his second wedding, saying, "Do you really think someone who abandoned their family deserves a celebration?" And refrained from giving any support thereafter. "Dad, come on. Remember, you'll need me to take care of you in the future. We're family. We need to help each other. I don't need you. Why would I want to be a burden to someone like you?" Knowing that Tony was wealthy, Douglas often demanded financial help even after that. But Tony never gave money, and even made it a point to include it in his will. The will clearly stated that the assets should go to me and his grandchild, the child of Douglas's ex-wife. Stern Tony ensured that not even a single cent would go to Douglas and Rita. I realized this when, during the funeral arrangements, Tony's lawyer showed me the will that Tony had entrusted to him. Recalling the anger from those days, I felt deep gratitude for what Tony had left me. So, as you've heard, Douglas has no rights to Tony's inheritance. Listening to the lawyer read out Tony's will, Douglas and Rita were flabbergasted. Adding insult to injury, I told Rita, "By the way, when you took things from my home, you thought it was like an advance on the inheritance, right? Well, as you've heard, you have no rights. You must return everything." With that, I pointed to the necklace she was wearing that day. Although she glared at me resentfully, with the lawyer present, she just clicked her tongue and threw it back at me. "I wasn't told about this. I came here today thinking I'd get the inheritance. Didn't you? I thought you knew all about it when you got engaged because you used to say things like you're much more attractive than Douglas's ex-wife." I remembered how Rita's attitude had once made my blood boil. I had thought my son had been deceived by such a woman, but now, it felt like they were a match made in heaven. "We're taking that inheritance. What about the hospital? Without an heir, who's going to run it?" "That's too bad. Tony already appointed his colleague as the director." "What? Isn't it supposed to be his child?" "Well, when you act out of the norm, you reap what you sow, right?" Rita was desperate for getting the inheritance, asking the lawyer, "Isn't there anything we can get?" However, the lawyer had no intention of divulging any information to Rita. He simply relayed the contents of the will, making it clear that the couple had no rights whatsoever. This is unbelievable. Something's definitely wrong here. If so, what are you gonna do? Will you sue me? If you want to add more embarrassment to yourself, go right ahead. It seemed Rita was deeply offended by how I handled the situation. With flushed cheeks, she stomped away with heavy footsteps. Soon after, Douglas followed her. After watching Douglas leave, I discreetly fist-pumped while holding a necklace. After that, Rita never reached out to me again, and everything was settled without a hitch. I was worried they might approach my grandchild, but Douglas, who didn't even have the decency to pay child support, likely wouldn't make any move. Thankfully, there didn't seem to be any problems. Now, Douglas and Rita seem to be in quite a dispute since they didn't inherit any inheritance. Rita even told Douglas, "I married you thinking I'd get a large inheritance." Apparently, they're on the brink of divorce. There's a saying, "Love lasts as long as money endures." It sure fits them well. I once got a call from Douglas demanding, "Give me the inheritance you got or the house." Of course, there was no reason for me to comply. I said, "Cut the crap," and hung up immediately. It's disappointing how irresponsible my son has been, but recently, there was some good news. It was a letter from Douglas's ex-wife, informing me that the inheritance process was completed. Along with a picture of my grandchild, I received an update on the family and a thank you note. She wrote, "My child is so lucky to have such wonderful grandparents. They seem to be living happily, Tony." The grandchild Tony always cared about seems to be growing up healthy and living happily with his new father. I was so delighted by the letter that I immediately read it aloud in front of Tony's picture. Even though I was quite disappointed in Douglas's behavior, I'm glad to share this good news with Tony about our grandchild. This household is the worst. My parents are bedridden, and on top of that, my older brother is confined to a wheelchair. Keep your voice down. Everyone can hear you. I'm saying it loud enough so they can hear. Put yourself in my shoes. I come home exhausted from work every day, only to return to a house filled with sick people. It's depressing. Recently, my husband has been complaining as soon as he comes home every day. I'm terrified that his harsh words will reach my in-laws and Bill, who are sleeping in the other rooms. However, Brian, you don't do anything. As soon as you come home, all you do is lay there and ask what's for dinner. Can I take a shower? You don't even go check on your family. That's what I've been saying. I'm exhausted from work. I can't do all that. If you're not going to do anything, you have no right to complain. Wait, aren't you misunderstanding something here? Misunderstanding what? Housework is your job, isn't it? Who do you think is providing for you? Don't act so high and mighty. You wouldn't survive without me. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 years old. I've been married for 6 years. I lost my parents in a traffic accident the year I entered elementary school and lived in a foster home until I graduated from high school. After that, I got a job at a factory making electronic components, a subsidiary of a major electrical equipment manufacturer. My husband joined the parent company a year after I started working there, straight out of university. We got to know each other when he was assigned to our factory, started dating, and eventually got married. My Bill was single and worked as a system engineer. He was working as a freelancer. When we got married, he started living alone in a rented apartment that doubled as his workplace, and my husband and I moved in with his parents. When I met his parents for the first time, they treated me warmly despite knowing I grew up in an foster home. I was often looked down upon because I didn't have parents, so their kindness deeply touched me. My mother fell ill a few years ago and was mostly bedridden, so I quit my job when I got married and became a full-time housewife. On her good days, she would teach me, who wasn't very good at housework, various things. I have 2 sons, so I always wanted to cook with my DIL. I'm really happy that you're here, Rachel. I caught myself wondering if my mom were still alive, would we have spent time together in the kitchen like this? When I made a mistake with my cooking, my husband would often criticize me, but my in-laws would eat it without a word of complaint. She put a lot of effort into it, so you should just eat quietly instead of complaining. My Phil would often scold my husband. My Bill would only visit once a month, but he was always smiling. He would bring sweets from famous shops and share them with me. He was always thoughtful and kind, like a real brother. I was truly happy to be part of their family. However, 3 years ago, when my Phil retired, my mom contracted pneumonia and started living a mostly bedridden life. She had been talking about going on trips with her husband after his retirement, so she was devastated. I did everything I could to cheer her up. My Phil, now free after his retirement, actively helped with her care. My Bill also came to our house to take care of her, and slowly she started to smile again. However, the next year, my Phil also fell ill. He was hospitalized for about 2 months and, like my Mill, became mostly bedridden. My husband didn't even visit him in the hospital, but my Bill often visited and helped with his care, which was a great relief. My Bill, John, told me it's only natural to take care of his father, without making a face. On the other hand, my husband doesn't take care of my Mill at all, not even when I'm at the hospital. I've got a job, you know. It's not some laid-back gig like John's where I can just hang at home, is my husband's excuse. It irks me, but with John's help, we managed to get through while my Phil was in the hospital. But now, we have to start taking care of both of them. I thought it was only natural to take care of my in-laws, but it's frustrating that my husband is not at all cooperative. Hey, can you help out a bit on your days off? I think it'd make your dad and mom happy. I've got no time for that. John doesn't even live here, but he anyways comes here to help. Why don't you do anything when you live here? That's because he doesn't live here. Be grateful I'm even staying here. As days go by, my husband's foul mouth got worse. I never knew he was like this, and my disappointment just grows. It was such a relief that John would pop in to check on his parents, and I could get the shopping and housework done. I was starting to get used to this life, thinking maybe we can make it work. But then, John had a car accident and suffered a severe spinal injury. Now he's bound to a wheelchair. Why does everything bad keep happening? I found myself very upset. John, now in a wheelchair, had to move back to his parents' place. Great, another mouth to feed. Is this your fault? What are you talking about? Ever since I married you, it's been one disaster after another. Are you some kind of jinx? When he says that, I start to feel like maybe I am. Maybe they'd be better off if I just disappeared. But if I leave, what will happen to my in-laws and John? I couldn't see my husband taking care of all three of them. And since John came back, my husband hardly ever came home. He's always working late or having business dinners. On his days off he's playing golf or out with friends. John's getting used to life in a wheelchair, and he can do some simple things on his own, but not everything. And he's still the same bright and kind person he was before the accident, which sometimes makes me wonder if he and my husband are really brothers. My in-laws and John were hurt by the way my husband treats me, and they told me I can leave him if I want, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Then one night, my husband came home drunk, and he brought a woman with him. "Hey, I'm home, this is my maid." My husband introduced me to the woman. "Come on, she must be your wife. She actually looks like a maid though." "Who are you?" "I'm Brian's girlfriend. He said he wanted to show me what his wife looks like, so here I am. I didn't expect such an old lady though." "What's your problem coming to my house?" "Chill out, I brought Brian home because he's drunk. You could at least thank me." "That's right, don't get all high and mighty, maid." And with that, my husband passed out. "No sleeping here, Brian." "Oh well, I can't help it, I'll leave him to you." She shrugged and waved as she left. I was on the verge of tears looking at my drunken husband snoring in the entrance. I'd rather be a maid than deal with this. If I was a maid, I wouldn't feel so humiliated and could keep it professional. The next morning, I confronted my husband about bringing a woman home. "What's the big deal, so early in the morning?" "I'm hungover, you know." "Yesterday, the woman who came back with you said she was your girlfriend." "She said that, huh? Is it true?" "Yeah, it is." As the husband smirked, he answered without the slightest hint of guilt. I could feel my heart turning cold as he admitted his affair so casually to his wife. "So, you've been cheating?" "Well, I guess you could say that, but you're not even a woman to me anymore." "What do you mean? Why do you think I married you?" "Why? I thought you would be a good maid." "What?" "My mother was always in a condition where she could need care at any moment. I married you so you could take care of her when that time comes." "I don't really understand." "With a woman who has no family, nobody will complain no matter how I treat her. You have no place to go, so you have to stay here." "Well, I didn't expect my father and brother would be in need for care as well, but whether it's one or three, it's all the same." With my husband laughing and speaking as if it was all a joke, I could feel the strength draining from my body. Did he see me this way from the very beginning? The thought that he married me with such intentions brought tears to my eyes. Seeing me like this, my husband laughed again. "I'll leave you here, so make sure you take good care of them. And don't complain about whatever I do outside. You don't have the right to do that. You're just a housekeeper and a caregiver." I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. But I couldn't just leave either. Just like my husband said, I have no place to go or rely on. But more than anything, I can't abandon my in-laws and Bill, who have been so kind to me. They were the ones who taught me what it felt like to have a warm family. How could I just leave them behind? If I divorce my husband, I'll be a stranger to them. But the only ones I could call my family are them, and I couldn't let go of that feeling. Seeing that I couldn't argue back, my husband became even more outrageous. He had no problem cursing in front of my in-laws and Bill. I'm so unlucky, surrounded by these three burdens. I need to blow off some steam, or I can't go on. From my perspective, he's not doing anything around the house or helping with the caregiving, just saying and doing whatever he wants, even freely having affairs. It seemed like he's having enough fun. Oh, I'm taking my paid leave next month and going on a trip to Hawaii with my girlfriend. What? I need a break from this dreary house. So it's an affair trip, right? You're technically my wife, but you're not my main woman. I told you, you're just a caregiver. So this is not an affair trip, it's a trip with my main woman. I was speechless as my husband declared this loudly. There's no point in arguing with this man. Or rather, I couldn't even find the energy to argue or get angry anymore. I see. Do as you wish. I'd do so even without you telling me. His declaration of an affair trip couldn't stir up a shred of jealousy in me. I once again realized that I held no feelings whatsoever towards my husband. The only reason I was there was because I wanted to be with my in-laws and I can't leave my Bill behind. That was all I wanted. My husband was smugly telling his in-laws and his brother about his plans to travel with his mistress. My in-laws and my Bill were looking at my husband with very cold eyes. And so, the next month, my husband went off on his affair trip in high spirits. You should take care of the three without any worries. That's all you're good for. Rather than feeling angry, I was relieved to think that I wouldn't have to listen to his sarcastic words for at least a week. That night, I spent my time peacefully, and my in-laws and Bill seemed a little excited. And then I slept well. The next day, when I woke up, I had already overslept, and I hurried downstairs. Oh no, I overslept. You guys must be hungry. But when I rushed into the living room, I was frozen by the sight in front of me. It seemed I was still asleep. Was I dreaming? Because I've seen this scene in my dreams so many times. What's the matter, Rachel? You look like you've seen a ghost. Mima looked at me with a smile. I think I'll go wake up properly. Saying that, I turned around and was about to return to my bedroom. I thought I was saying something that didn't make sense, but I thought it was because I was in a dream. No, what are you saying? You're definitely awake. What? We're in the middle of a strategy meeting. There was a whiteboard set up in the living room, and my Bill was standing in front of it with a pen, writing something. The whiteboard said escape plan. Was this not a dream? Why was my Bill standing? Where was his wheelchair? I looked around the room and saw it folded up in a corner of the hallway. Come on, Rachel, don't just stand there. Come sit at the table. Isn't this a dream? Well, shall we execute the plan? With that, my Phil stood up with a mischievous smile. Mima also got up from her seat as if to follow him. I almost collapsed when the three of them, who were standing, looked at me. And then, a whirlwind week passed, and my husband, who had returned from his trip, called with a bouncing voice. I'm at the airport now, about to head home with my girlfriend. What? Have dinner ready. From now on, she'll be living with us. Don't worry, you're staying right where you are, taking care of us, playing the part of a housemaid for both me and her. Oh, I see. Do as you wish then. You're a pitiful woman, you know. You can't even complain when your husband brings another woman home. You have nowhere else to go, no family to rely on. You're stuck clinging on to me. Anyway, keep on serving me. He seemed to be enjoying himself immensely. He was probably overjoyed because everything was going exactly as he planned. I didn't say anything. An hour later, I received a frantic call from him, a total contrast from his previous call. What's going on? What do you mean? There's a stranger in our house. Oh, they must have moved in. Who are they? What are you talking about? Well, it's a rental property, isn't it? Once we moved out, it's rented to someone else. The real estate agent told us he appreciated how well we kept the place clean. What do you mean, we moved out? Our home was a rented single-family house we started leasing when we got married. It was meant to be for us and my in-laws, with my Phil covering the rent. In fact, most of our living expenses were borne by him. At first, my husband did contribute to utilities and other expenses. But as my mother-in-law fell sick and my Phil became frail, he started to withhold his contributions, arguing that he was doing his part just by living with them. My Bill had doubts about his attitude, but he had already moved out and didn't feel he could say much. Then, he had a traffic accident. Initially, he was partially paralyzed and thought he'd be confined to a wheelchair for life. But within a week, he began to improve. Though it seemed to be temporary, he used this as an excuse to move back in with his parents. My in-laws were actually feeling much better, but with my husband's behavior, my Bill decided to play a trick on him. They pretended to still be in poor health to deceive him. That's when they started planning to leave the house behind him. My Bill's help was vital, so he returned home. My in-laws had secretly bought a retirement home using their retirement funds and savings, just in case something happens in the future. My Bill handled all the paperwork. While they were deciding when to move, they discovered my husband's trip with his mistress. They thought it was now or never to carry out the plan. I was utterly surprised when they told me about this plan. What's more, they had even arranged for a place for me to stay. I'm sorry for keeping this a secret from you, too, Rachel. I thought you wouldn't be able to keep it secret since you're such an honest person. No amount of gratitude would ever be enough for all that you've done for us, my in-laws said as they held my hand and smiled. I said I wished I could spend more time with them, and they told me, "You have your own life, dear. You don't have to be tied down to us. My parents are in good hands with me around, Rachel. You don't have to worry about a thing. But you know you're always welcome to visit. You mean more to us than a real daughter. We sincerely pray for your happiness." I was so overwhelmed with gratitude and happiness that I couldn't stop crying. When I told my husband about this, he was speechless. He must have turned pale as he had his eyes on my FIL's retirement funds. He used to tell me to get hold of my FIL's bank card. Now, he realized that's not going to happen. Where am I supposed to live? What about my stuff? He asked. You barely had any stuff. The furniture and appliances all belonged to my Phil. Your parents sold your belongings including expensive bags and watches and gave me the money they got from selling those as a down payment for alimony. I replied. Down payment for what? It's alimony for all the verbal abuse you've given me. And I will claim additional alimony for your affair separately. What? There's no way I'm paying alimony to a caregiver. It doesn't matter what you say. I was legally your wife, so I have the right to claim alimony from both you and the mistress. Well, that settles it. Wait, where are you now? Let's meet and talk. No way. I never want to see your face again, and I'm not telling you where I am. No way. I'll send the divorce paper and alimony claim to your office. After that, he tried to contact me numerous times, but I blocked him. But he was reluctant to proceed with the divorce. However, my Bill hired a lawyer, and we managed to finalize it, and I got a lump sum payment for alimony. Moreover, it turned out that the woman he cheated with was his friend's wife, and her furious husband confronted him at his office, exposing everything. My husband ended up losing his job. The woman he cheated with was kicked out of her house as she had been caught having an affair with my husband before her trip with him. That's why my husband was saying that they'd come back home together. But they ended up breaking up and he couldn't find a new job. I heard he's struggling with debt from his past extravagance and alimony payments and is juggling multiple part-time jobs. He asked my Bill for help, but of course, he refused and laughed it off. Later, I found a new job through my FIL's referral and am enjoying my work every day. I still meet my in-laws regularly and they treat me like a real daughter. I always look forward to seeing them. Additionally, my Bill is getting married to a wonderful woman. She's very kind and they make a great couple. I was also invited to their wedding. When my Bill said, I would be happy if you could attend as my sister, I couldn't help but cry. I hope to continue having a good relationship with my in-laws and Bill.